Hi, my name is Brandon Graisley. I teach high school computer science. Let's talk about the software design lifecycle. Software begins with some idea of what you want to accomplish. We call that the conceptualization stage. We have some concept for what an application should do, and then you figure out sort of how it works. You have some ideas about how it might work in the background. These aren't exactly programming and code ideas, but they're more like algorithms. You have ideas of what's supposed to happen behind the scenes. And so you move back and forth between these two areas in this stage. You have an idea, you see if it's reasonable and logical. Maybe it's not quite, and so you update and change that concept. And you move back and forth freely between these two. And then at some point you have an idea that you're ready to look at the interface. What will the application look like from the user's perspective? And then you end up moving freely between these three. You have to resolve and reconcile them with each other before you should move on. Otherwise, you're going to end up having to do a lot of extra work. So once you have this area solidified, it's time to move into the design stage. This is where we start talking more about programming and less about what it's going to look like from a user's perspective. So we might develop some individual modules. We think about how things are controlled, the data structures that we're going to need. We develop specifications. All of these different components go into planning out before you actually start writing code. You aren't programming here, you're planning for programming. The programming part is called implementation. Let me just point out those double-ended arrows. At some point, you might realize in the design section that you have to move back to conceptualization, that maybe what you thought was possible isn't possible or isn't the best way. And this is going to be true in the implementation stage as well. Implement means start writing code. To do that, you might grab some resources from elsewhere. For example, maybe somebody else has written a library that will resize images for you. Or maybe you have a library of images, a bunch of stuff that you can use in your application. Those are documents or projects or other programs that come in to help support your implementation. But at some point, you're done or partly done, and you move on to the testing area. You try things out and see how they're working. And based on that, you're going to identify changes pretty much all the time that are necessary. You test, you implement, you test, you identify changes, you make those changes, and that's the implementation stage again, and then it's going to require more testing. And you get kind of stuck in this loop for a really long time usually. That's how software design and development usually goes. But at some point, you'll be ready to move on to the distribution stage. That's where you're going to prepare and distribute your software to its intended audience. And once again, always move backwards. You have to go back to the implementation stage again later as you maintain the software, as you update it, add features, fix bugs, and so on. And that's the software design lifecycle. Thanks a lot.